Hello everyone, I'm with me. This has been a long time coming. An actual video and not just vlog stuff. Let's not dwell on it though, let's just cut right to the chase. Actualize.org is a website, organization, whatever you might call it, developed by Leo. Leo is a man, but not just any man. You see, this guy puts out content like no other. This isn't some short-term investment type shit either, where you watch one video or two videos and you get the gist. This isn't your typical radical Christian or spiritual guru either. This guy might actually be insane. I'm not just saying this in any derogatory fashion either, I mean it sincerely. Now, I'm not a professional psychiatrist or counselor, I'm merely speaking from experience when I say this. So what got me into making a video about Actualize.org and Leo's content? Why talk about this random crazy dude on the internet? I'm sure you might get the hint, but I recently stopped watching Actualize.org's content. I wasn't watching it because I was trying to do research into his beliefs either. I watched it because I genuinely believed in the things he was saying, and oh boy, he said a lot of fucking things. There is a shitload of backstory to this, so I'm going to skip it. What's important is that I was currently going through psychosis when this part of the story took place. I started meditating. I've always wanted to meditate, and I figured that my psychosis, which at the time I didn't even consider the possibility that it was psychosis, was a sign of some sort, that I should start discovering hidden things within myself. After meditating for a while and having enlightening experiences, I started getting into meditation groups on Reddit. They helped me figure out what I was going through. That's also where I found the phrases enlightenment and awakening. This will come in handy later. I listened to music while meditating and believed that by meditating to music I could spiritually connect to it and discover the true meanings behind them. I listened to Tool, of course, because I was a huge fan and I always was fascinated by their more spiritual and abstract music. Through this, I discovered things that I had already believed, but for some reason they became more apparent and in front of my face. I had always believed that the universe was repeating itself, but I never actually took this into consideration to the degree that I was taking it during meditation. Things really started looking up, but eventually it took a very dark turn. I was hit with stories upon stories of how the universe was created or how I got on planet Earth. I started believing that reality wasn't real and that I was imagining everything. My parents weren't real, they were actually me. I saw myself in movies and TV shows and believed that I was the literal sound waves coming out of the speakers. After months of this, I eventually wound up in a mental hospital. It felt like salvation. Upon getting out, I still had trouble trying to get these thoughts out of my head. Ended up in the hospital for a second time in the beginning of 2021. After my second visit, I started to look for answers. I started to seek answers for what I was going through. I felt like I had so much spiritual insight, and I had been watching Alan Watts during my time in meditation. Finally, I came across Actualize.org. Let's take a look at a couple of clips from Actualize.org and explain the parallels of what I had believed at the time.
Hey, this is Leo for Actualized.org, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking about my enlightenment experience.
There it was, someone who had the same experience I had, a spiritual awakening. I forever now consider my psychosis not psychosis, but a spiritual experience, or awakening.
What is reality? Wow, that's one hell of a question. That's the deepest question you're ever going to ask in life.
Thank God I found Leo. I now have a database of all these questions I've been holding on to for so long. I needed a video that would help explain what reality really is.
And believe it or not, it is possible to answer this question, although the answer is so radical that it can't be communicated with words. But nevertheless, we're going to try here today.
Of course. What I experienced is an experience, and an enlightening one at that. It cannot be explained with words.
Now, of course, the answer is extremely threatening to your life and to your sense of reality, which is precisely why it's so difficult and so rare to answer this question. Reality is infinite consciousness, and reality is infinite imagination.
These are the dangers of Actualize.org. The problem with me wasn't that I had taken on these beliefs of Leo, but that I already held these beliefs. Finally, someone understood. I felt less alone, and I felt like I wasn't crazy. This sense of belonging and understanding made me attached to Actualize.org. I had been feeling like reality wasn't real to begin with, and for someone to finally come out and say it made me feel so much better and even happier.
See, when you were born, or when you imagine that you were born, you had no idea what you were born into. You had no idea who you were, what the world was, what life was, what the point of life was, who your parents were, who other people were, time and space. None of it. You didn't know anything. You didn't even know that you were born, and you didn't even know that you were going to die. You knew nothing at all. You were a blank, ignorant slate, we might say. And then you quickly started learning stuff. And you quickly started misunderstanding what reality is. So now we have to deal with these misunderstandings, which run very, very deep in your subconscious mind. So that's why this conversation is so tricky.
It's like he was reading my mind. I had believed in reality for so long, and these beliefs ran deep. After finally breaking free, this man helped me figure out what reality really is.
This is advanced stuff. This is not your average freshman class. I'm talking about the most advanced things that a human being can ever possibly understand, okay? So stay with me here.
These talking points about how what he was saying was quote-unquote advanced gave me a sense of superiority, and that I was heading in the right direction. I felt like I could even surpass Leo one day in my life, considering how young I was. I was stoked to hear that I was already this advanced.
The key mistake you made when you were born is that you assumed that it's possible for there to be physical objects that exist independently of consciousness. You saw rocks, you saw trees and cars and people, and you just assume, well, I was born into this world, this universe of people, trees, cars, and rocks, and roads, and cities, and so forth, and that's what I was born into. Well, that's not possible. That's not what reality is. Objects are not possible. Only consciousness is possible. Now you ask, well, Leo, what is consciousness? This right here is consciousness. This present moment, what you're seeing here right now, this is consciousness. This is as close as you get to reality. You're in reality right now. Not only are you in reality, you are reality. There is no physical reality and no physical universe. The Big Bang never happened. You are not actually sitting on the planet Earth. Billion years have never passed. There is no space, there is no time. You are not a biological living creature. In fact, you were never even born. You do not have parents, you did not have a childhood. You did not grow up. You did not press play at the beginning of this video. You imagined all of that. Because reality is infinite imagination.
This is a very solipsistic way of viewing the world. Perfect! I am solipsistic anyways. This gave me flashbacks to that one video I made on the Scientology movie I watched. You remember, physical objects aren't real when you aren't looking at them. Only consciousness is real. Instead of seeing this as a red flag, I figured Scientology had the right answers but hid them behind some aliens and a very expensive paywall. Why go through that obvious call when I can get all these insights free on YouTube via actualize.org?
And furthermore, you are imagining that you are not imagining it, but that it is real. And because there is no contrast between imagination and reality, because reality doesn't exist. Only imagination exists. Whatever you imagine becomes real for you, to the point where you mistake it for reality. So you are God dreaming up this world, lost in your own dream, until the point where you wake up. You see, this is very radical. You do not want to accept what I'm saying here, and you have a million excuses for why what I'm saying doesn't make sense, and why it is false, and why I'm crazy. But what I'm telling you is the absolute truth. And deep down, you know this. Deep down, all of your excuses and all of your stories and all of your justifications are just something you're imagining. In fact, your denial is something you're imagining, which is precisely how reality gets created.
Okay, so I'm currently editing the video right now, I'm going to chime in and actually respond to what he said right after this clip, but he's fucking scary. The problem with already believing in actualize.org is that I never had to deny these beliefs in the first place. I took them at face value. Why did I not see past this? After all, this is exactly what Christians say to atheists. Well, I justified what Leo was saying here by believing that we all have these inherent and repressed feelings, that we are all God, and all it takes is an awakening to actualize this. Once we are awakened, these feelings come up, that life isn't real, and we have to accept these feelings. An easier way of saying it is this. Basically, deep down there's a button, and once that button is pushed, you can no longer believe that reality isn't real. Now let me tell you something, that button that has been pushed is not your friend. That button that has suddenly got you on your feet, making you question everything around you, is a fucking demon. This isn't some inherent belief we all hold deeply that will wake up one day. This is a fucking demon. I have seen the eyes of true evil, and true evil is believing that your delusions come from a divine source. They come from you, your God, and all your delusions are real, but only when you imagine them, because reality is imagination.
How to fall in love with reality or life. I see far too many people disillusioned with reality or life. Even amongst supposed spiritual people, I see people doing spirituality, getting involved with psychedelics or meditation or whatever, going on the spiritual path, and they just actually, rather than gaining a zest for life, they lose the zest for life. And these days, there's so much depression, nihilism, cynicism, inaction going around, so much feeling sorry for yourself, so much complaining and whining and trolling. And you have to discipline yourself to cut through all of this bullshit. This is human bullshit, you have to understand. This is not how you create a great life for yourself.
Okay, Leo, I trust you. Explain to me how I can get that zest for life.
If you're gonna fall in love with life or with reality, but you're not falling in love with consciousness, then how's that ever gonna work? Because life and reality are consciousness. So first, it's gonna help for you to realize that life and reality are consciousness. That's something you have to awaken to. One of the greatest things that I've gotten from all of my personal development and spiritual work is that I can sit here and just observe consciousness, whatever I'm looking at, my hand or even a computer. Like I could be looking at a laptop and just appreciate that my laptop is made out of consciousness and just sit there and marvel at that fact. Or I can marvel at the fact that my hand is made out of consciousness. I can appreciate the beauty and magic of consciousness.
It's kind of beautiful in a way, isn't it? It feels like he appreciates life for what it is and is hypnotized by the beauty of life itself. These are the traps that made me fall into this channel in the first place. This so-called appreciation is about to take a dark turn. Let's keep listening.
I think most humans on this planet are not tapping into like even 1% of their creative potential. This is a gross insult to your nature as God. And I think that honestly, an enormous amount of people simply end up killing themselves or being stuck in depression or nihilism or cynicism or just wasting their entire life simply because nobody ever shows them their full creative potential and how to actualize it. This is not just a way to earn money. This is not just a way to doodle on a notebook and to entertain yourself when you're bored in class. You have to see it for something much deeper. This is your way of connecting to consciousness and falling in love with consciousness.
There is some good and bad delivered in this message here. You aren't living to your highest potential. However, this kind of message also puts sadness and doubt in my mind. Will I ever become the perfect self I always dreamt of being? Is there hope left for someone with a mental illness?
As you get in touch with the magic of it, the divinity of it, you start to respect and appreciate it, and then you want to devote and sacrifice your life working on its behalf. That's when you connect to life, and then when you start to sacrifice and work towards it every single day, that's when each of your days becomes precious. And it becomes meaningful in that it's a sacrifice you're making towards the miracle of life.
After a while of struggling with this problem of not knowing what to do, and then trying to do things, and failing, and then trying to do other things and failing, I slowly started to realize that me and Leo have entirely different mindsets. While Leo can pull himself up by the bootstraps and conquer his eating addiction, for example, I can't simply get out of my parents' house and live on my own. I can't even start this beautiful journey he describes, and I don't know why. Why is there something wrong with me? Why can't I do what Leo is describing here? Look, I appreciate the message, but I can't wrap my head around how to do it. I just want to be happy.
I want you to consider this attitude that I'm giving you right here versus the sort of typical attitude you have towards your life. The typical attitude that your parents or your friends or your coworkers have towards your life, where they just wake up and then they're just running around doing the rat race stuff they got to do, like doing their chores, paying their bills, doing what the boss told them to do, that kind of stuff, right? Notice how different these attitudes are, like very, very disconnected from the beauty, the wonder, the divinity, the miraculous nature, the mystery of consciousness. Like consciousness has nothing to do with the sort of attitude of just kind of like going through your day, paying your bills, earning some money, trying to minimize people yelling at you for failing to do your job, failing to show up on time. This is not a positive, constructive way to live. This is sort of like you're just living along the path of least resistance. Like you're going to school to do your homework so that your parents don't yell at you, kind of thing. Or you're just doing the bare minimum at your job so your boss doesn't fire you, sort of thing, so that you can pay your bills, come home at night and just eat some junk food and watch some Netflix and then do it all over again the next day. This is if you're gonna live a life like that, you might as well not live at all.
See how he demeans everyone around him? He may not realize it, but he believes that he's better than everyone else. Yes, he is trying his damnedest to get people to start living their lives the way they want, but it doesn't work. Leo, for people like me, it's not that easy. I was only falling in line with everyone else because that's where I'm trying to go. I just want to be normal.
You're wasting your life, and deep down in your soul, in your spirit, so to speak, you feel that, you know that, you're living way below your full potential. Then what's going to happen is, by default, you're going to get disillusioned, you're going to become passive, you're going to go with the status quo of whatever everyone else is doing around you. You're going to join the herd of sheep walking off a cliff around you, which is what society is. You're going to engage in dumb, petty, shallow, animalistic behaviors. You're going to pursue dopamine hits just to hold you off. You're going to be addicted to all sorts of things, from sex to food to porn to trolling people online to watching hours and hours of TV and social media, and perhaps even worse things like hard drugs. You can actually reprogram your mind and shift your attitude such that, for example, when you go to the office and all the coworkers there are passing around a giant box of free donuts that the boss has brought in and pigging out on those, you might want to pig out on one of those donuts too. But you also know in the back of your mind this is not healthy for you, it's not good for you, you're probably going to feel bad after you eat it in an hour, and you're probably going to regret it the next day, so forth. There's a certain mature joy that comes from renouncing something unhealthy. To have an attitude of falling in love with health is not just to not eat the donut because you're not going to look like how you look in the mirror because you're going to be too fat. It goes way deeper than that. It's like, no, if I'm not healthy in all the dimensions that health pertains to, then in a certain sense, I'm disrespecting life, I'm disrespecting consciousness, I'm disrespecting myself, and I'm disrespecting God.
Holy shit, we get it. Look, man, I get that you're healthy, but it's a fucking donut. These talking points you keep shoving down my throat make it worse on my mental health than it already is. Now I feel like I'm disrespecting my entire family because I drink energy drinks and eat donuts. This is not healthy for people. I get the message you're trying to send, but you're painting donuts in such a bad light people feel like shit after trying to figure out how to love life. This may not sound like such a big deal, but for people under the influence of mental disorders and psychedelics, their minds are fragile. They are easily influenced and might take the fact that they ate that donut yesterday way more seriously than they should.
Lately, I've been practicing this with girls because, I go out to the nightclubs, flirt around with girls, practice my social skills. Sometimes in the nightclub, I'll meet a really drunk girl. And it's interesting because it presents a sort of you might say, ethical, moral dilemma. It's really a test of integrity, because it's like, okay, she's into me, she's attracted. If I keep pushing this, this could lead to sex. Some easy sex. Should I capitalize on that, or should I say no? I could say no because of just I don't want to be. I don't want it to boomerang on me. She might regret it, and then she might accuse me of rape or something. Of course, that's an obvious reason not to do something like that. But lately, I found an even deeper reason to say no. And the even deeper reason is I'm just disgusted, when I see a girl in a club that's too drunk, when I see people who just drink and don't respect their own health and their own bodies, I don't mind if somebody has a drink or two to let loose at a club, that's fine. But if I see that the person is just a habitual drinker, drinks way too much, gets way too wasted, becomes very sloppy, and just doesn't really respect their own health, their own consciousness, or the consciousness of reality. When I see that in a girl, it just makes me disgusted with her. I don't even want to have sex with her at that point. And so the reason to say no is really not because I'm worried of what will happen if I sleep with her. No, the reason to say no is because it just violates my own respect for consciousness.
There. This was the video that made me finally decide to stop watching Leo's content. I'm just disgusted with her. Apparently, he has too much respect for himself to take advantage of women. Mind you, that is what he is doing. If someone is obviously intoxicated and you are not, you pushing to have sex with them is taking advantage of them. But he has a deeper reason. He has too much respect for himself to engage with these toxic people who are getting too drunk according to his standards. Leo is not as good of a person as I thought he was, and now I'm starting to question everything he said. Now you see, this is how you know you've joined a cult.
The appeal of shooting up heroin in some back alley, there's zero appeal to that. Zero. Actually, it's a little bit funny. Actually, there is some appeal to that, because at this point, I would be willing to shoot up heroin just to experience its effect on my consciousness, just purely from an exploration of consciousness perspective. And I bet you I could do it and not get addicted to it. Because the people who do get addicted to heroin, it's not actually so much because the heroin is so addicting, it's because they have nothing else going on in their life.
When I questioned atheism, I didn't suddenly think that every atheist was immoral. I didn't see my audience and think about how brainwashed they were. I just thought that I broke through the fabric of reality. Now I see what really happened. I fell into a cult, and now everything Leo has taught me has become less about love and more about self-righteousness and even malicious cult-like thinking. I started watching his videos again, and seeing just how I fell into the same traps Christianity made me fall into. He believed that he was the 1% who saw through the bullshit we call life, but he isn't. Everyone feels disillusioned with life sometimes because of how bullshit it is. Leo, you aren't that special. I hate to say it, but you're not the 1 in a million who broke through. You're just like everyone else. It's ironic, isn't it? This video about love and this line right here, they really don't go hand in hand, huh? Although I hate that Leo has said this, I'm also glad he did. In a strange way, what Leo said here actually changed my life. This time, it was for the better. So what do I do now? For a while I didn't know what to do anymore. How am I supposed to grow? How am I supposed to figure out this bullshit and get through to the happy me that I've always wanted to be? I'm about to show you a video on the actual science of mental illness, and not just some pseudoscience bullshit. This video helped me understand more about myself than any of Leo's videos combined. Let's take a look at the key points that really helped me understand what I was actually going through.
What is it like to have schizophrenia? To improve our understanding of this disease, we need to do much more than simply memorize lists of symptoms. Instead, we need to learn the underlying mechanisms of schizophrenia so that we can better recognize it when we see it in our patients. Some have hypothesized that the core deficit in schizophrenia involves the concept of salience. Salience is the interestingness of information, or how important we perceive that information to be. We give salient items more attention and are more likely to act upon them. If I were to tell you 10 random numbers, say 1558378290, but not tell you anything about them, you probably wouldn't find them particularly salient. Without that salience, they will likely drop from your attention and quickly be forgotten. However, if I told you that these numbers are from tomorrow's winning lottery ticket and that there's still time to enter, then suddenly they become very interesting indeed. By telling you this, I have increased the salience of the information. The numbers themselves have not changed at all, only their salience has changed. On a biological level, the neurotransmitter dopamine plays a key role in the process of salience. When information is found to be salient, your brain releases dopamine. This rush of dopamine makes you pay more attention to the information and motivates you to act upon it. Our brains use salience to filter incoming information. We take in an enormous amount of information every day. Within 30 minutes of waking up, most of us have already read the news, checked the weather forecast, browsed social media, and listened to music. If we gave our full attention to all of these things, we would quickly become overwhelmed and incapacitated. Instead, we quickly move on from information that has no direct relevance to us. From this morning's information, your brain might interpret only the weather report as salient, as forgetting to bring an umbrella will leave you cold, wet, and miserable. The other information is found to have no particular significance, so it is filtered out and quickly forgotten. So how does this relate to schizophrenia? People with schizophrenia are believed to be in a state of aberrant salience, characterized by excessive and illogical release of dopamine. When dopamine is flowing in this way, salience is assigned to every bit of new information without any clear connection to rewards or punishments. It would be like suddenly entering a world where every letter and number had the potential to make you $1 million, or where every decision had the life or death consequences of a motorcycle accident. People in the early stages of schizophrenia describe being in a state like this. They say things like, "My senses were sharpened. I developed a greater awareness of the world and became fascinated by the little insignificant things around me. Sights and sounds possessed a keenness that I had never experienced before. It was as if parts of my brain awoke, which had been dormant. My senses seemed alive. Things seemed clear-cut. I noticed things I had never noticed before. I felt that there was some overwhelming significance in this. I felt like I was putting a piece of the puzzle together." This makes life initially quite vivid and dramatic for someone in a state of aberrant salience, yet it rapidly becomes a confusing and unbearable way to live. Normally, we can figure out why our brain is telling us that something is important. We know that paying attention to the weather forecast will help us to avoid having a bad day. However, someone in a state of aberrant salience will perceive a sense of overwhelming significance in all of their experiences without being able to understand why. Why me, they ask. Why now? Why does this all seem so important? To make sense out of this experience, people with schizophrenia will begin to develop explanations for why each piece of information suddenly feels so important, so relevant, so personally significant. If they watch the news in this state of heightened salience, they might come to believe that the president must be using their State of the Union address to communicate a special coded message meant only for them. When listening to music, they may get the feeling that there must be a reason why that particular song came on the radio at that exact moment. On the internet, any random stimulus, say a pop-up ad about a new brand of lotion, may seem so special and compelling that it must, somehow, be the key to saving the world. To everyone else, these ideas sound, frankly, psychotic. For a person in a state of aberrant salience, however, these delusions of reference help them to make sense out of a senseless mental environment where everything, everywhere, seems to have some life-changing importance. When the filter of salience breaks, you become constantly bombarded by new information every second of the day, with no way of making sense of it all. It would be like trying to watch dozens of TV shows all at the same time. In this state of confusion, it is no wonder that people with schizophrenia can appear so bewildered and distracted by even simple concepts.
Wow. Just when I lost all hope, this scientific explanation of what I was going through rattled through my entire belief system. Not only was it dead accurate of what I was going through, it explained what I was going through in a scientific way, allowing me to see that reality is not as otherworldly as it seemed. After long contemplation and struggling to fix myself, it all wraps up in a neat little bow. Reality is real. This is as real as it gets. The thing I was struggling with the most is to find any purpose to do anything at all. When you believe in God, you believe God has a plan for you. When you're an atheist, you don't believe in any divine plan, but you at least believe you have to make the most out of this life before it goes away. When you believe in a multiverse, that reality isn't real, that you're dreaming of everything around you, you feel smaller. Each thought you have is real, in the most literal sense possible. Every character in any movie or TV show is real. The more you digest the world around you, the smaller you feel. I've broken free now from this. No longer am I going to actively participate in these videos. No longer am I going to believe in the multiverse.